7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening. Welcome to Pima Community College's student-sponsored 2020 Governing Board Candidates Forum. I'm Lisa Broski, Pima's Vice Chancellor for External Relations, and I have the pleasure of being your moderator tonight. Tonight's forum is sponsored by the PCC Adult Education Student Ambassadors, the Student Senate, and the College Honors Program. I thank our candidates and our students for their participation this evening. Before we begin, I would like to turn the floor over to Mr. Damian Klinko, current chair of the PCC Governing Board, for a few remarks. Mr. Klinko?
Thank you very much, Ms. Brodsky. I'd like to begin by welcoming the candidates this evening. I want to thank you both for stepping forward to run for this seat. The caliber of both of your backgrounds and your expertise ensures the next member of the Pima Community College Board will have a perspective that will help guide the future of this institution. I am personally very grateful that you have both offered your service and stepped into the public square to run a campaign. Until you've been a candidate, it's difficult to understand the sacrifice and impact running for office has on your family and your life. Unlike Congress or our state legislature with 2-year terms, or our city council or county supervisors with 4-year terms, the PCC terms are 6 years. Like the US Senate, these longer terms give board members the ability to make choices and decisions for the institution based on good governance and public policy, not politics. As a taxing authority, we are elected to represent the taxpayers of Pima County. Created by the voters of the county 50 years ago, the taxpayers have continuously and generously supported this institution, our students, our workforce development, and lifelong learning. The PCC Governing Board is charged with setting the policy of the college, adopting an annual budget, and hiring the chancellor, setting annual goals, and measuring the outcomes of those standards. We are so grateful again for both of you participating this evening. Thank you, and we look forward to hearing your comments tonight.
Thank you, Chairman Klinko. Tonight's event will give our audience an opportunity to learn more about the two candidates running for the District 1 seat. District 1 currently is held by Mr. Mark Hanna, who is retiring from this position at the end of the year. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge Mr. Hanna's incredible support of the college during his term, including time as board chair, and his deep commitment to the success of our students. Thank you for your service, Board Member Hanna. District 1 has two candidates running for the seat this fall. Taking them in alphabetical order, I'll introduce Mr. Ethan Orr first. Mr. Orr, could you say hello to our audience, please?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Wonderful, thank you. In Mr. Orr's bio, he states that he's a fourth-generation Arizonan who grew up in Tucson. He attended PCC as a student, and after completing his master's degree in public administration at the University of Arizona, he started teaching at Pima. He taught at Pima and the University of Arizona for almost 20 years. He was the Director of Economic and Community Development for the City of South Tucson, and he started the Empowerment Zone for the City of Tucson, creating more than $5 million in employment tax credits. Mr. Orr also was the Director of Linkages, helping people with disabilities find employment. He served in the state legislature, where he increased funding for adult education and protected funding for Pima Community College. Currently, he works for the U of A, where he helped start the College of Veterinary Sciences and makes it easier for Pima students to transfer to the university. Catherine Ripley is also a candidate for the District 1 seat. Ms. Ripley, please say hello to our audience.
Hello, thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you and welcome. In Ms. Ripley's bio, she states she is currently an adjunct professor in political science at Pima Community College. She also taught history and leadership at Harvard University, Boston University, Tufts, MIT, and Northeastern. Ms. Ripley earned her master's degree in National Security Affairs at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. As one of the first women accepted to the U.S. Naval Academy, Ms. Ripley served for 26 years as a naval officer and U.S. diplomat. She was Defense and Naval Attaché and Chief of Defense Cooperation at the U.S. embassies in East Africa and Europe, where she led national security and humanitarian assistance and maritime security and counterterrorism operations. After her retirement, Ms. Ripley worked at Raytheon in Tucson as the International Business Development Lead for countries in South America, Europe, and Asia. Ms. Ripley also served this past year as Executive Director for the Pima County Democratic Party. She is the mother of two and has made Pima County her home. Now let's meet our students. Mr. Duran, could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. My name is Joshua Duran. I am a student senator on Pima Aztec Student Senate for the Pima Online Campus, as well as the All College Council representative. I'm currently a business administration student as part of the Phi Theta Kappa Honors Institute, the Pima Honors Program, the Pima Business Club, and well into it. Next, I'd like to introduce Ms. Sage Fukai Mccullough. Ms. Fukai Mccullough.
Thank you, Josh. Hello, my name is Sage Fukai Mccullough, and I am another Pima Aztec Student Senator. I represent the West Campus. I'm also this year's Student Governing Board representative. Finally, I am studying political science here at Pima Community College. And Mr. Ponder Ghibli.
I'm muted as well as being Clinton Ponder Gilby. I was pre-engineering. I'm transferring to social services. I am in PTK, or Phi Theta Kappa, and also honors. And I'm glad to be here. And I'll turn it over to Vanessa Valenzuela.
Hi, I'm Vanessa, and I'm an adult education student and ambassador. We offer high school equivalency, English language, transition, and citizenship classes. And I'm happy to say that I'm now transitioning to college. I recently passed my GED and will be moving forward with my Associate of Liberal Arts with a concentration in Translation Interpretation Studies. Thank you.
Thank you, students. That was fantastic. And welcome all of you to this event. For the benefit of our audience, let's go over the format for tonight's event. First, this will not be a debate. Candidates may not interrupt each other, and there will be no rebuttals. The idea is to create a conversation. The student's goal is to give the college and the community an opportunity to learn more about the candidates running for the governing board. The students have selected 8 questions out of quite a number that were submitted anonymously by students, faculty, and staff this past week. The students reviewed each question thoughtfully and thoroughly, and in some instances, similar questions were combined into one. I also want to say thank you to student Amber Ripley. She's representing our honors program. She participated in the vetting of questions, but wasn't able to join us this evening. Each candidate will be given 3 minutes to answer, and the candidates will alternate who goes first with each question. Candidates, when you hear the timer's bell, you'll know your 3 minutes are up, and Libby Howell is our timer tonight. Thank you, Libby. Each candidate also will be given a final 3 minutes to offer closing remarks of their choosing. Is everybody ready? All right, let's begin. Mr. Duran, please proceed with the first question.
For our first question, we'll begin with Ms. Ripley since Mr. Orr was introduced first. The question reads, what skills, connections, resources, and expertise do you have to offer and are you willing to use on behalf of the organization? Mr. Ripley, you have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you for that question. Thank you everybody on this Zoom panel. My skills and my experiences really are founded in my leadership and my management experiences, both in the Navy, in the military. I served 26 years and I've led thousands of sailors all over the globe. I've managed giant resources to include multi-million-dollar budgets, as well as facilities, supplies, human resources, which are people, as well as training and education programs. And I taught at some Ivy League schools while I was in the military as well. Those leadership and management experiences across the board are precisely what I feel a governing board member needs. I continued learning and honing my skills when I worked at Raytheon, and again at nonprofits here in Tucson, where I had to manage people, not sailors, but volunteers and civilians. So I run the gamut of experiences. And I think with a school as large as Pima Community College, with several campuses, learning centers, the new amazing centers of excellence, staff, faculty, administrators, students, I think you need someone who can multitask and manage and oversee the large budgets, crisis manage as well. And I crisis managed running counterterrorism programs all up and down the east coast of Africa and Southeast Asia. So I think you need both the skills of crisis management as well as forward-looking strategic planners. I was one of the strategic planners in charge of planning the counterterrorism strategy for all of Southeast Asia when I was in working for special operations. So I know how to both look at the current situation, this COVID world we're living in, as well as plan for the future in a post-COVID world that none of us really know may happen. We don't know what's going to happen. The future is uncertain, but we still need strategic planners that can look ahead, both at budgeting, at lowering tuition, and at increasing enrollment. I have connections all over town, to include the president of Raytheon, several businesses, a lot of nonprofits, and one of my skill sets is networking. And I networked all over the city, all over the county when I was the executive director of Pima County Democratic Party, both in government as well as in business. So I think those skill sets can be best used in a board of this importance and of this size. Thank you.
Mr. Orr, please proceed.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. And before I start talking, I just want to say thank you to the students who put this together. When I was in college, I also served in the student government, had to hold down multiple jobs and still managed to go to class. So I appreciate your dedication and your commitment to putting this on. It is a big deal and it's very important. And Vanessa, congratulations on your GED. That is amazing. Great job. One thing that I've found as a Tucsonan is that when we succeed, it's because we succeeded together. In terms of the success, I have already started working with, I've been in conversations with the chairman and vice chairperson of the Appropriations Committee on how do we restore the baseline funding. Now, what does that mean? When I was in the legislature, I protected the $8 million in baseline funding and worked with students at Pima College to increase our funding for adult education by $4.5 million annually. In addition, I used my relationships in rural Arizona to resolve a longstanding conflict with Santa Cruz County, all of which resulted in over $25 million of benefit for Pima Community College. By being there, if you just divide that by the number of students, that's $1,275 a student. That's about 15 credit hours. That matters. When I worked at Linkages, working with our businesses at any given point, and I expanded it statewide. When I started, we were helping 87 people with disabilities find meaningful employment. By the time I was done working with our businesses and groups like Pima Community College, we were helping almost 1,100 people statewide find meaningful employment. We set up training programs with the Beacon. We set up training programs with our community colleges, and we helped students succeed. I also created effective collaborations with all of our nonprofits. When I was at the city of South Tucson, but then also the city of Tucson, Lisa mentioned the empowerment zone. It was actually over 500 million in tax credits that created and actually was the foundation of much of the success we've seen in downtown. And we made it the #1 site in the nation because we were able to work together. At the U of A, not only have I created pathways and articulation for our Pima students, and ways even resolving little things, which isn't so little if you're a student, but making sure that our Math 125, our non-science math, was able to transfer. But I have expanded our dual enrollment programs. I've reached out to all of our high schools. When I was in the legislature, whether you were in my district or not, I met with board members and superintendents usually every week to understand their issues, and then I got that done for them. For example, Hendrick Elementary, they needed a new air conditioning. I paid attention to the state budget line by line, and I found there was an extra fund balance in the school facilities board, and called the Jim Love and David Baker. I said, drive up to Phoenix right now, and we got $800,000 for the air conditioning. I have done that multiple times through multiple relationships.
Thank you, and I apologize for the misspeak on that. Ms. Fukai Mccullough, you have the second question.
Great. Mr. Orr, you're the first to answer on this question.
Okay.
A few years ago, the college got in trouble with our accreditor, the Higher Learning Commission, because the governing board was too directly involved in the day-to-day operations of the college. What do you believe is the appropriate role of a governing board member?
That's a great question. I believe the appropriate role is to really set policy and build relationships. One of the things that I have done in my job at the U of A is I work with all of the community colleges throughout Arizona to help build a relationship. In fact, the way that I got the funding, the $8 million to start the new College of Veterinary Sciences, was through those relationships. So I think board member to board member, it's important to advocate for the community college, both with state legislatures and also other leaders, and then to really build a network of supporters to get the funding. One of the things that we can talk about later that I will always hit right now, the 8 districts, the 8 rural districts, which constitute 20% of our funding, are fully funded, and the 2 districts, Maricopa and Pima, that constitute 80% of our students are not funded. Again, when I was in the legislature, I built a network to protect that. I will build it again. In terms of policy and oversight, I think it's very important. I've served on boards on the Community Foundation, the Arts Foundation. I've been on a number of other boards throughout there, and I've been an executive director for over a decade. I understand that you can't have board members going around the chancellor and trying to reach in and set governance. You need to set broad policy. But in order to set broad policy, you need to understand the details. We can't simply espouse platitudes and hope that works. We have to understand the budget, and I think the current board is doing a good job of trying to do that. And then really use that understanding and those relationships with the community to set direction for the chancellor and set and help work with you as students, which is why PIMA exists, articulate what that vision looks like. Does it include more night and weekend classes? Does it include moving students through the technical programs? Does it include setting up more pathways into the university? All of those things are the job of the board to listen to the students, listen to the community, and articulate the vision, and allow the staff and the faculty to execute that vision.
Thank you. Ms. Ripley, please go ahead.
Hi, yes, thank you for that question. I think the key here is the term shared governance. And I think that we've come a long way from the days that you indicated when the board was maybe perhaps too down in the weeds with some of the day-to-day operations of the college. But with shared governance, if it works right, the board should serve to oversee, look at policy suggestions, look at the budget, look at the overall operations of the entire college, and collectively make decisions that are for the greater good. And when you talk about shared governance, it means collaboration, trust, honesty, and communications. So the board members themselves need to communicate with each other and be on the same page. They need to be communicating frequently with the chancellor, the administrators, the faculty, and as well as being fully aware of what is happening in all of those campuses and with the students. And that's why it's wonderful to have a student governing board member. I think that's a key piece of this, is to get the voices of all the people that are involved. A lot of moving parts to make the campuses and a college of this size work. I think one of the things that we really have to look at here is having a governing board that not only just meets once a month and overlooks a few talking points and point papers, but is more involved, maybe not day to day, but more involved ahead of time by reading over and getting input from all of the stakeholders, from both the community as well as internally within the school. I think a prepared board, a prepared governing board that comes together once or twice a month to discuss issues should already have in their minds what these issues are and do that research themselves. In the military, we called it leadership by walking around. There are a lot of captains that just stay in their stateroom or stay up top on a ship and steer the ship, or in a facility that's running aircraft. But the good leaders are the ones that walk around, that actually see, that have eyes on situations before they become issues. So I think that's not micromanagement, that's just awareness. And then letting and listening to the people that are actually operating the day-to-day management of the campuses, let them bring their ideas, their issues, their concerns, listen to them, and come up with the best solutions. So I think, again, collaborating, and the key to every problem on the planet pretty much is communication. So I think two-way communication, bottoms up and top-down leadership are really the key here. And then you don't need to micromanage when all the pieces are working and everybody who has a place in every campus, every facility, every aspect of the staff, the faculty, the administration are doing their jobs.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ponder Gilby, it's your turn.
Ms. Ripley, you'll answer first this time. A student asked the following: not all fields of study can be delivered virtually or online. I'm a fine arts student and most of my classes are studio classes. My teachers have been exemplary, but some of the process does not translate. How can a college ensure students like me are equally served? How do you think we should proceed in the coming spring semester and next semester 2021 in regards to COVID-19?
Thank you for that question. I think that Pima Community College is in a unique position where we actually have space. And really, to combat COVID and to get over until it is completely eradicated or there's a cure or virus, I think we still need to be very careful. And for labs, and especially in the fine arts, I think we do have a unique situation where we have a lot of space at our campuses. One of the hybrid ideas that I heard one of the arts faculty members bring up is having, say you have 30 students in a class, split them up so that a Monday, Wednesday class, half the students would attend on Monday, half would attend on Wednesday. The half that don't attend on Monday would see it virtually live and streamed. That's one way. I think that we can still socially distance, separate students, use the facilities, the amazing facilities that we have in media and video technology to actually use our big screens so students don't have to be so close to each other or to the instructors. I think we still need to try to look at creative ideas for in-person teaching. You cannot replace that, especially in labs and especially in the arts and the fine arts. I think there are creative methods that we can use. So let's use the space that we have, use the technology that we have with audiovisual, and be creative about alternating days. When it's not 190,000 degrees out, we can have classes outside. We have beautiful campuses. Why not use that? Use audiovisual techniques, use microphones, use the video screens. I think we can't give up on that because we don't know when this is going to end, and we can't just stop all of those classes from happening and prevent, especially in the humanities and the fine arts. Thank you.
Mr. Orr?
Thank you. And I really appreciate that question and the learning style. One of the reasons that I was able to work with the business community to help create the JTED in 2006 was because a third of our learners, like yourself, are tactile learners at best. And you can't put them in front of something. You can't certainly put someone in front of Zoom and have them succeed the way we would hope and want them to succeed in education. One of the things that I do is I've been on a number of COVID committees for the University of Arizona. So we follow the science on this very closely. Every week I go through county by county for the cooperative extension, and we look at how many, very specifically, can we have groups of 10? Can we have, and we look at that data and we follow the science. And one of the things that we're starting to find is we can start having outdoor meetings, and you can start structuring your classes in a way that lets students have that in-person learning, again, particularly for arts and labs, but also for the students that really need it. So what we did in Flagstaff is we have a Master Gardener program, and instead of the 30 to 50 people, and we just did this last week, is we divided them into groups, almost with like a version of a TA, teaching assistant, in groups of 10, and it was incredibly effective. The people needed the social contact. They learned as much as they would in a large class, and they were thankful for the human contact. So there are a lot of things that we can do with mask and social distancing and appropriate behavior that would allow us to return to in-person school. Another thing that we can look at is successful educational models elsewhere. There are teachers that are very concerned about their own safety, as well they should be. We can start looking and applying the flip model, which will allow students to be in the classroom, interact with a teaching assistant or a class assistant, yet watch the teacher in a recorded or online. This model has been very successful in our K-12 system, and we've actually looked at it as a distance model learning in some of the programs that we've set up at the University of Arizona. So the basic thing we need to do is follow the science, but use the science to safely get students back to the in-person learning that they need to help them succeed. Because we also have to look at what is the opportunity cost of, and that balance. You don't want to go back too quickly, but you don't want to keep people locked out of school for another semester.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Valenzuela, you're next.
Thank you. Mr. Orr, you're first to answer on this question. How can the college help students who do not have the technology or technology skills to be successful in a mostly online environment?
That's an excellent question, Vanessa. Thank you. One of the things that we need to look at is all of our student supports. So how do students have access to the online equipment? We need to make sure that we have access, like Clint and I were talking about, areas where you can go get online access at all of our campuses. We need to work to make sure that students are able to get grants and scholarships and other sources of funding for that equipment, whether that's making a deal with Apple or some of these other computer stores to get a good discount, and then partnering. For example, like I said, I head up the scholarship committee of the Community Foundation, partnering with the Pima College Foundation and some of these other groups to provide students that technology. In essence, and this is something I'm working very closely with the Sunnyside School District, trying to get USDA grants for some of our student learners that don't have access. We cannot allow the digital divide to separate our community, and we cannot allow that to be the determinant in whether or not students succeed or do not succeed. Pima must be a launching pad for success for every student. So those are just a few of the ideas to start making sure that people have access. We need that ultimately is the most important thing. The other thing, and I'm sure it'll come up more in questions, we need to look at the total cost of attending Pima, not just the tuition, but also the fees. And like you alluded to, the cost of getting this equipment. And we need to bring down the total cost of attending Pima College. And we need to be setting up, again, partnerships with businesses, scholarship funds, and other venues to make sure that every student who needs access to digital technology, who needs access to our classes, has that access.
Thank you. Ms. Ripley, your turn, please.
Hi, thank you, Vanessa. I think that, yeah, there's a lot we can pack into this question and this answer. One is just the short term, looking at crisis management and managing what we have now. I think Pima Community College did a great job initially by providing, I think it was more than 700 laptops to students that needed them when we were scrambling to figure out, wow, we can't just cancel classes this fall. This was this summer. What are we going to do? So that was an amazing. I applaud all the people that got those laptops, that handed them out in the parking lots, and then went the next step further by providing in the parking lots Wi-Fi access. That's a start, and that was immediate crisis management. Strategically planning, again, we don't know how long this is going to last. And also, I have to say, it's actually a good kickstart because the future will lie in a lot of technology that will require access as well as the know-how with internet learning, online learning, and how to use technologies with iPads as well as laptops. So we're being forced, this is a forcing function to get into that world. With that said, yes, grants, and I think, against short-term crisis management, finding money. Where are we going to get the money to get more laptops? But that's for hardware. Also for software, I think that we need also the technology and also the learning on how to run things. Like we jump through hoops. I applaud all the faculty at Pima jumping through hoops to learn how to use Zoom, for instance, and then not just Zoom, but then how to learn how to use the chats, let alone D2L and all of the other amazing add-ons that we had to really manage to capture with online learning. All of us old school teachers, we just show up to class and we just use it used to be a chalkboard. We use the whiteboards, we use the smart boards, and even the smart board technology, which I love. A lot of teachers are still catching up with that, let alone learning how to use Zoom. Pima's done a great job. We need to do more in training, not just the students, but the faculty on all the technology and the software that's currently being worked on all across the nation. So I have friends, fellow classmates of mine that are CEOs of companies that are doing just that. They're working on the future of online learning, and they're also collaborating with schools, community colleges, especially with operating funds and allowing the extra cost, not just tuition, but allowing textbooks to be offered to community colleges for free. Textbook costs, tuition is really not the major complaint that I'm hearing from my students. It's those $125, $200 textbooks. So there's a lot we can do because we're not spending money on, say, facilities during this shutdown. pivot some of that money, pivot that funding, and strategically plan now for what we're going to do next semester. So that's what I would look at. I think I heard the bell. Did the bell ring?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Ripley, you're
Cut me
up
off.
next for the next question. What types of policy changes and operational changes within the college would you support that address equity, access, and inclusion issues for communities of color, including our Black students, Latinx students, and Indigenous students, along with students from the LGBTQ+ community?
Thank you very much. This is a topic that's very near and very dear to my heart personally. I think that Pima Community College has taken steps in some of the studies that they've already instituted at the college, but I think there needs to be more. And I think it needs to be, again, a top down. This needs to be top down. I think we need to start with administrators and faculty and staff, and we need to have, it's not very much, and people will freak out when I say mandatory training. Everyone hates mandatory training, but I attended diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was a seminar, a short seminar that was lovely. It was wonderful. And it was meant for faculty this summer in preparation for fall. And there were 5 people on this Zoom, and all 5 of us were women of color, myself included. And that's not the audience that needs to be, this isn't just a one-off training session. It needs to be embedded, it needs to be felt, it needs to be lived, it needs to be owned by everybody, and it needs to be top down, I think. And then, of course, I think we need more offerings for women's studies, for transgender studies, for studies for African American studies, Asian studies. I think that the humanities can offer that. I think there's a lot of room for that. I think awareness starts with education, and this is our job as educators, is to offer as much as we can. And I think equity is important. It's important to start off with, there's a difference between equity and equality. There's a big difference with diversity and inclusion. And I think all of those definitions are academic, but we can't just teach them in a seminar that 5 women of color attend. We need to really make it part of who we are, especially by definition. This is Pima Community College. It's the community that we're serving. 55% of our students are minorities. 55% of our students are women. We owe it to our community to make sure that EDI is actually not just a check in the block that our school did that, but that we actually are living it every day. So I would say more studies. We need committees to look into this, not just throw in and slap in a few courses here, but actually hire professors that are experts at that. Not just, I'm half Japanese, but I couldn't teach studies on ethnic studies, and I'm a woman of color. We need people that are actually experts at it, and we have them. We probably do have them in our faculty. So we need to use those talents or look elsewhere. But I think it's crucial. It's totally crucial. The students that attend our college are from here. They live here. They're going to raise families here, and they're going to stay here. And again, 55% of them are minorities. We owe it to them.
Mr. Orr?
Thank you. I appreciate that question. And I would agree that Pima College needs to be a place of security and support for every one of our learners, every one of our students. And we as an institution, we as leadership on down need to commit, and I know I will commit to that. One of the things that's incredibly important, I work, and Kat's right, there's a lot of experts out there. The most important thing is to listen to them and to listen to the shared and learned experiences of other students. I work very closely with the University of Arizona Diversity Office, and one of the things that we did is we said, we're going to make our colleges look like and reflect the future of Arizona, reflect the future of Tucson, and we've done that. We've increased in some of our college minority recruitment, minority achievement. So for example, I mentioned Sunnyside District. 3 years ago, I initiated a partnership with Sunnyside District, really getting our faculty, getting people like myself talking to families at the 7th grade level. It's a family conversation. And I'm pleased to announce that this year from Sunnyside High School, we saw a 73% enrollment increase. And from Desert View High School, we saw a 45% enrollment increase. mainly because of the work of our Office of Diversity and Inclusion and because of our Vice President of Enrollment. So we're very proud of that. One thing that really stuck to me as a Tucsonan, my first job at the city, my first full-time job, I've been working in restaurants since I was 15, was City of South Tucson, where many of you know there was Barrio Libre. And I came in as an outsider, and the community was gracious enough to adopt me and educate me. And one thing that I saw that has always upset me, which is why I've worked over 20 years now to create the diversity and inclusion, is I saw students with incredible aptitude, incredible ability, and U of A and even Pima College was monolithic and unobtainable. What we need to do is make sure that every student, because this is a resource for our community, that every student or adult learner sees themselves potentially as a Pima College student, then we need to create the supports at the university. And I would, if we don't have this, I would support the creation of first generation college student clubs, conversations, student mentors, the ability to actually create ties. So one of the things that I created at the U of A was a program where I had students come from the high schools, they have lunch with fellow first generation students, they talk, and then we give them a tour of the campus, and then we go out and we work with the families to show them that it is affordable and that they could actually see themselves there. We've been very successful. The one thing that I want to say when I think about knowledge, I really, as an academic, view two types of knowledge. That which makes us a better worker, our vocational skills, and that which makes us a better human being. And oftentimes we see our arts and our culture, but many other things, many other pursuits in that as well. And I view understanding of diversity and equity, and I view the ability to advocate on behalf of everyone and understand other people as part of that knowledge that resides in that which makes us a better human.
Thank you. Mr. Orr, for the next question, what areas of PCC's board governance do you think need to be improved? How do you envision bringing improvements that will sustain administrative changes over time?
Well, I think the first thing in terms of board governance needs to be better communication among the board members. One of the things that I have always done, I was a city council aide. I worked for Carroll West for a long time, or a long time ago, I should say, but before I transitioned to city staff. And having that ability to communicate in a very candid method, council member to council member, council aide to council aide, allowed us to avoid a lot of public food fights and actually really move forward. Another thing that, and I know that the Pima College Board does this, and I'd actually advocate expanding it. One of the things that I think the city of Tucson does, and candidly not a lot of other entities in this region do well, is the use of the study session. Right now, we really still have a lot of presentation, presentation, vote. And I think a study session, a fully developed study session, I applaud Damien for really starting to do that with some of our relationships with other entities, allows board members to have a candid conversation, allows them to bring people from outside the traditional communication structure and throughout the rest of the community and have very candid conversations. Then you'll start seeing board members start to develop areas of expertise like adult education or financial aid and really be able to be kind of go-to people within that board. I think the other thing that's very important as a board member is you need to make sure that you're getting into the details. Every step I've been, every career, but also every elected office, I've gotten into the details, and that has allowed me to be so successful. That was Mo Udall's secret, a congressperson from here who wrote the Endangered Species Act. He understood the details, and you need board members that are willing to go into that. The other thing is, in terms of board governance, we need to be actively engaged with the community and listening to community, listening to the faculty, listening to the students particularly, and listening to the staff in Pima College so that we have a real understanding of what's going on. And we need to be working with all of the other board members that are throughout the state. The only way you're going to get your state funding restored is by working in conjunction with other community colleges.
Thank you. Ms. Ripley, your turn.
Hi, thank you. I'll repeat what I said earlier, which is really communication and collaboration. I mean, those are two words that can be thrown around rhetorically, but really it comes down to having board members that can communicate and actually get to know each other. I think that's one thing that I don't know the inner workings of this current board. We only see what we see on PCC TV and the recorded governing board sessions. But I would propose that we look at this like any kind of organization where you need to know your colleagues. You need to know who you're working with, just like you need to know those students, the faculty, the administration. You need to know the chancellor. You need to know their backgrounds, where they're coming from, where people come from and what their backgrounds are, couch the way they behave and the way they work and the way they communicate. So I think I would personally want to see that the board gets to know each other. If I'm elected to this board, I want to know them all. I want to know them all, even personally. I want to know what their styles of leadership and management are. I think they need to communicate and know each other. They need to communicate and have offsites with administration, with the faculty, and with the staff. Again, leadership by walking around. I think that one of the things that needs to happen is every board member should have not just a tour of every campus and the centers of excellence, but routinely pop into the campuses, routinely pop into a classroom, sit in on a class, see how different teachers operate, talk to the people in the cafeteria, in the libraries, sit down with a librarian all day. When COVID ends, I understand that this isn't happening today, but this is what I did even as an adjunct professor. I walked around and I got to know all of the people that worked in the library and at the cafeteria, at the registrar's office, just as a little bitty adjunct professor. Learn what the veterans office does. Know every inch of it. As a governing board member, especially, every inch of every campus should be visited. That's one thing that I don't know that's happening. I've heard that it might not be happening. I think that communicating not just with each other, but with interior to the campus. And again, I will agree that I think it goes without saying, we need to have connections and networks with the community and with what the business community needs and wants. We need to help serve the community, but serve the students first. I think budgeting and making sure we get out of this recession is very, very important, but never at the expense of the students and our local population to whom we serve. So I think communication, and again, not just rhetorical words, true collaboration, true understanding. Again, governing board members need to do their research. I read things every day, not just from our authors, but from across the country. I read articles from community colleges at Bunker Hill, Massachusetts, all the way across into California. So this is what I think should be done. Thanks.
All right, Ms. Ripley, you're the first this time.
Yes.
This question has two parts. What do you know about the college's expenditure limitation and how it contributes to the amount we can spend on operations? And given that, what is your position on Proposition 481, which has no additional cost to taxpayers?
Thank you. This is going to be a short answer because Prop 481, I've read a lot about, I'm moving around. I read a lot about this, and it seems complicated only because there's a lot of legalese written into any bill, any proposition. This one I agree with because the expenditure limitation should have been lifted and changed and studied long ago. I mean, we have spent many decades with the same expenditure limitation, which is based on per student spending. And again, it's not going to raise taxes. We know this, and it's written clearly into the proposition. It will not raise taxes. It's only going to allow us to spend the money and from the taxes that we already have, and it will allow us to spend it towards operations. So I think that it's a good thing. It needed to be done long ago. Let's just vote for it. Let's just push it through. And then we can go on and fight and lobby to to actually get state spending back. Right now we have zero money from the state. So I think Prop 81 opens that window. Hopefully it's a floodgate towards getting more funding into public education as it should be, as according to the Arizona State Constitution, where college should be as close to free as possible, if not free. So I agree with it. Short answer, it has to happen. And it's really simple. It's math. It's just based on an old law long ago, and it just needed to be updated. Thanks.
Mr. Hort, it's your turn to respond.
Well, I certainly support 481 to the extent that I'm getting their literature and I'm handing it out with my own. It is a very important thing. But I think we need to remember what Proposition 481 is. It's ultimately a workaround because of, and they were induced by an organization called ATRA, and that mindset a while ago from the state legislature restricting the ability of community colleges to raise the taxes and how to spend their money. I fundamentally disagree with those types of restrictions because you're binding the authority of elected officials, and I will fight those. But really, 481 is a workaround because of these impositions, and we also need to look at ways of pushing it back, which can be done. For example, when I was in the state legislature, the same group pushed these types of tax constraints. It actually would have cut our secondary property tax in half and cut our library district funds in half, which meant as a Pima County, we were looking at potential closures of our library, and it had the full support to pass. I was the only one in the majority party from Pima College. So I personally, or from Pima County, I personally could not stop that. So what I did is I found out who else would be affected by this. In this case, it turned out to be the city managers and flood control districts in Eastern Arizona. I drove up to those areas to build the relationship and the grassroots network to block it. Justin Olson was chair of appropriations at the time. It was his bill. And one of the reasons I was so successful at the legislature, and I'll be successful if I'm given the opportunity on this board, is I candidly try to understand members, and I never try and embarrass them. I always try and be very honest and forthright. That's the biggest thing I did at the legislature. So I pulled Dustin aside and I said, I have the votes to block your bill on the floor. I don't want to embarrass you. Why don't you just withdraw it now? He did a test vote. He figured out, because I had worked with all of the Democrats and I had worked with a number of Republicans representing those counties to create a coalition to block it. He quietly withdrew his bill. We shook hands and I said, as long as this never comes back, we don't have any more issues. And the bill never came back. We need to look at who else is affected by these impositions. The other community colleges that I know, Coconino, for example, because so much of their land, a third of Coconino County is in the tribal area, they're actually hurting more than we are. Eastern Arizona would benefit. So we need to create a coalition of community colleges and a coalition of library, flood control, and counties, as well as some of our city control districts, to push back on these impositions. In terms of 481, it is an excellent workaround that we shouldn't need, but I certainly support the voting for it.
Thank you. Ms. Ripley and Mr. Orr, this is our last question of the evening, and then you'll have the opportunity to make final remarks. Our question is, what do you feel is Pima's greatest weakness, and what could you as a governing board member do about it? Mr. Orr, it's your turn to go first.
Well, I think one of the things that we need to do, and we have amazing people doing it, but telling our story, telling about the students like yourself, Vanessa, that have succeeded. I know one of the things that really, the reason I pushed so hard to get the $4.5 million for adult education was because Regina Suit took students like you and like everyone up here to me at the Capitol. And I said, I have to get this done. And we did. And we did because of your story and the stories of fellow students. And so that's the most important thing. What Pima College is frankly life-changing. It has the ability to impact our businesses. If you look at the Achieve 60, they did a study. If you align community college curriculum or curriculum with business needs in terms of certifications and getting people jobs, you can generate an additional $7.6 billion for the economy and a lot more jobs for people to have. These types of things garner business support. But the most important thing that I would do is work to tell your story. Work to tell your story at the legislature, work to tell your story in the community. And I think the more we tell our story, the more we'll have those strengths. In terms of communication, again, I certainly think it's important to be communicating with the businesses. In terms of board governance, I think it's important, and I would commit to having, as often as they'll have me, I'll buy, having lunch or a cup of coffee with every board member on a regular basis, because that's the only way you create these relationship type strengths within the governance structure.
Thank you. Ms. Ripley, please proceed.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's a tough question, asking what the weaknesses are. Because we all have, first of all, we all have weaknesses, and every organization has room to improve. You're never perfect and you're never totally awesome. So I think that one of the things that I would look at improving at Pima Community College is capitalizing and bringing the community more front and center. I mean, really focusing on that second word, Pima Community College, because we have a community right here. We have Raytheon Missile Systems, now Raytheon Technology Systems. We have Davis Monthan, we have Caterpillar, we have Honeywell. We have large employers right here at our doorsteps that are daily getting in talent from both overseas as well as out of state. We need to cultivate the community that we have, not just, and I think it's wonderful that we have the centers of excellence. We have JTED that we're collaborating beautifully. I met with the superintendent of JTED, and we really talked a lot about furthering and improving that communication to make it more transparent, but also more of a continuum. I think we can improve on that, but really gathering together, communicating, and making this a giant continuum from really preschool through grade school, through high school, JTED, Earn to Learn, into Pima Community College, and into the workforce. I think it's important that we look at not just a lot of great initiatives that I've been hearing from the board and from the chancellor with some future projects that they're working on to collaborate with companies that are from out of state, to bring in global students, to bring in outside students to occupy our online studies. But I think we also need to not forget our local community. We need to not forget that the students that attend Pima Community College are staying here. That's our workforce. They're not just the electricians and the welders and the nurses and the EMTs and the aviation techs and the machinists. They're also the future leaders of our community. We need to cultivate, we need to groom them, we need to nurture them. So I think stronger collaboration. I spoke for almost an hour with the president of Raytheon 2 weeks ago. We have some great ideas. They did some wonderful work in Alabama to create this complete university, really, that would serve as a pipeline from college, community college, into their workforce. And again, not just the factory workers, but future engineers and future leaders of their company. We could do the same with Davis Monthan, with our veterans, with people that are looking for second careers coming out of the military. We could do so much more by collaborating, truly, not just saying the words, but truly collaborating, having committees, having task force that can get together and use that brain power to focus on our local talent. So I think that's something that I would improve on if I were a board member.
Thank you very much. And thank you, students. Well done. Ms. Ripley and Mr. Orr, you now have 3 minutes to offer any closing remarks of your choosing. And Ms. Ripley, we ask you to go first. Oh, you're muted.
I'm so used to, in this Zoom world, just shutting myself off as soon as I'm finished speaking. Thank you so much. Zoom etiquette, right? Student Senate, Honors Program, Adult Basic Education College, Career Student Ambassadors, audience members, thank you for hosting this. Thank you, Ethan, my colleague who's running against me as well. This is truly democracy when we can all speak civilly and get along and actually run a decent campaign. So my hat's off to you, Ethan, for that. We've seen a lot of ugliness this election season. We won't get into that. The board needs qualified members who knows what it takes to monitor all the moving parts. Like I said, the budget, the facilities, the students, the people, the safety, the security. I've done all those things for people all over the world. I can lead, I can manage, I can crisis manage, and I can strategically plan. I can write policy, I can enact policy, and I can lead from afar as well without micromanaging. I think this is what you need. You need collaboration. My experience as a US diplomat is a testament to that. I brought together nations that hated each other in the East Coast of Africa, in the Middle East, to collaborate and actually hold hands and hug and exchange phone numbers in my living room. So I know how to collaborate, I know how to negotiate, I know how to fight when it's necessary, but also to sit and listen when it's necessary. And I think you need those aspects when you're a board member of this caliber. Community college was made for this moment in time. It can be the key to recovery. It can be the linchpin to both economic as well as cultural and social recovery when this pandemic is over. And it starts with our community. It starts with community college. So it can give the most at-risk population a chance to recover. And there's much, much more that needs to be said about that. I strongly believe that in the future, once we manage to get through this pandemic and all the craziness that's going on with the elections, we'll be facing a lot more than that for some time. Again, strategic planning and having a board that gets along, preferably, and that can actually work together is what's going to be important. And I think I have those skill sets to do that. I've managed people, I've led people, I've been to 80 countries, and this is now my home. I have both the skill set and the passion to do this job. I know Pima Community College. I have students that I love and adore. For the last 5 years, they still write to me. They still ask me for support, and they still thank me for a lot of the things that we went over in my political science classes. So I know them, I love them. I love walking into that building when we could walk into that building. I leave there with joy, I enter there with joy. And I think it really takes more than the skills and the knowledge and the connections, which I have all of those. It actually does take a board member that truly is dedicated and love what they do and love the people and what community college is about. I can take the college to the next step. So please vote for me, and thank you so much for this opportunity. cat4pcc.com. Call us up if you want to have a chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Orr.
Well, thank you. And I definitely want to echo what Kat said. I think this is one of those races that I like to think we truly like and respect each other. I certainly have a great deal of respect for Kat, and we all need to work together in the community, both during and after the election. So I agree. I echo your sentiments, Lisa, that I think you have two excellent candidates. I think it's important that when we talk about it, it's not just enough to say it, you must have done it. And so when we talk about developing programs, for example, when I was at Linkages, we created a partnership because we had a low unemployment rate for people with developmental disabilities. And so we partnered with Safeway and the Beacon. I actually build 5 throughout the state. Whenever you walk into a grocery store and you see a developmentally disabled person bagging, stocking, sorting, we created those programs. We sat down in this job, I've sat down with like Mojave College, and we talk about a thorough articulation. I want to see those industry-based and other-based certificates that can turn into an stackable associates, that can turn into a baccalaureate or a master's degree. The way you get that done is the way I did it with Mojave College and our School of Mines. You get into not just the course level, but the curriculum level. And we were able to do that and draw students directly into a 2+2+2 program. So I've done this and I will continue to do this. And one thing I must say about the economic impact of Pima College, if you look at, as an old economic developer, the growth trajectory of America, it truly is miraculous. It doesn't just do a line, it does a parabolic increase if you go back to colonial times. And there are 2 major inflection points. And they started with education. The first was the creation of the land-grant institution in the mid-1800s, which I believe was one of the reasons that we had the Industrial Revolution, and it was inflection point 1. The second was really in the 50s when we started investing in our GI Bill, and we started creating in the 60s the community college system. And I think that was important, and it predicated the technological revolution that we're seeing now. And so every time we invest in education as a people and as a community, it benefits us as individuals, it benefits us as a society. Now, when I was a student at Pima College gave me hope. Where 30 years ago, I dedicated myself to building a better community. It's why I served as a faculty member as soon as I could. It's why when I was in economic development, actually bringing businesses here and helping local businesses expand, I partnered with Pima College, because workforce development is economic development. And it's why, as a member of the University of Arizona community, I am working so hard we've met with the deans to try and create faculties of learning. We want to find ways to get students lab access so that you don't just transfer in, but you actually have relationships and you're part of the community. And we need to listen to the business community for those that just need to get a job, to make sure that you have the proper supports to get that job and the proper skill base to succeed at that job. I'm part of Pima College, like I said, changed my life, and my time is apparently up. I just want to say join me in making Pima College a better place. And together we will use and we will work with Pima College to continue to make our community a stronger, more special, and more incredible place. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to both of our candidates. We really loved having you here tonight. This has been a great opportunity for the college community to learn more about you. We're grateful for your interest in serving the community by contributing to the betterment of Pima Community College. Once again, I'd like to acknowledge the work of the PCC student senators, students in the honors program, and the adult basic ed ambassadors, as well as staff members Valerie Vital King and Montserrat Caballero, who advised them. I'd also like to thank our IT, PCC, and PCC TV for their technical support. And a special thank you to Libby Howell, who herded all the cats for tonight's event. We appreciate her help with that. This concludes our event. Please have a good evening and thank you.
Thank you. Good night.